Ok, record.
Camera roll, action. Dobar dan, Peđa. Danas sam i gost Predrag Dragosavac, naš poznati putopisac, bivši novinar i svetski putnik.
Jednom novinar, uvek novinar.
Da, uvek stoji novinar. Dobrodošao nam, pretpostavljam da je tema razgovor, tvoj boravak u Brazilu i svi ti utisci koji si tamo pokupio, koji si lepo upisao u toj knjizi, pa molio bih te za neki uvod.
Hvala, Điđo. Thank you for coming. I will speak in English.
Good, let's speak English.
We have guests that are not speaking Serbian. And it will be first time, I think, for me having this talk in English, because I had some presentations to say in Serbo-Croatian when book was released a few years ago. But I would say that book is not really only travel book or impressions from that journey that lasted 6 months, you know, that I had, like, now it's already like 8-9 years ago. It's more about, I would call it rather a chronicle of long-term passion for Brazil, as I had family connection with Brazil from, let's say, childhood. My aunt lived in Brazil in 1950s, 1960s, 1970s. Then her older son, whose father is Brazilian, he was growing up in Belgrade, and he was just a few years older than me, but it was connection through that time, through food, through stories, through music. So it is really first, let's say, Brazilians. That my aunt was working in Brazilian embassy, so we were meeting through her Brazilians, you know, there were not so many of them in that time here. Then in, let's say, 2005, 2006, by chance, I started, to call it like by chance, I started radio program with one Brazilian journalist, young journalist that came to Belgrade because of his girlfriend. He was a journalist in Bahia. He was working at that time in Salvador. She was a flight attendant working in yacht, and as they had this low-cost possibility to travel wherever, she traveled to Bahia. That's where they met, and basically after that interaction of theirs, he resigned on his job, you know, and came to Belgrade and wanted to stay longer in Belgrade, and that's when we met. And it was my idea to he wanted to, like, he needed a job, you know, to like make some money, and basically we made a project to have promotion of Brazilian music and culture. And went with that to Brazilian embassy. We wrote, that was sent to Brazil, and basically that's, I was telling them, I'm joking, since then, actually in that time, while radio program was on, that in Belgrade, in Serbia, there are people who are paid by KGB, there are ones paid by CIA, and that I'm paid by Gilberto Gil. Gilberto Gil is this black guy, musician, first black minister ever in Brazil. Pele was state official, but he didn't have status of minister. Pele was secretary for sport. Gilberto Gil, who is really legend, very important figure of Brazilian music, and culture and public life. He became first minister of culture in Lula's government, and officially we were paid by Ministry of Culture of Brazil. So I am joking. Yes, I'm foreign mercenary, and I am proud to be paid by Gilberto Gil.
Good.
So, and I can say, you know, that my karma under like during this Brazilian time, it was really like.
What year
great.
that was?
Well, that was from 2005, let's say end of 2005 till 2012. We finished, I went to Brazil end of 2011, and then there were some shows after I came back, but then I finished it, you know, like and practically moved to Sweden in 2012. So, and then I was preparing, like it was throughout that time, I was publishing stories from Brazil when I was there. I was writing afterwards, and I was preparing book in that time, in 2012, let's say 2013. But then as I moved to Sweden, you know, that you become occupied with other things, you start learning Swedish, you know, getting to know that reality and adjusting, you know, looking for a job, you know, and so on. So, you know, that all those writings about Brazil were just put aside. And it was in 2016, practically my father was pushing me on me, and she said, like, you put so much time in that, you should publish it. It was the year of Olympic Games.
Sure.
You should make effort to publish that as a book, because that's then, let's say, a lasting documentary, you know, and in a way, yeah, that was, he was right. And why I'm putting this is from a photo from Stockholm, and I would say it's radio correspondenterna says, you know, Swedish radio has correspondents really like all over the world. I'm working as a official title is media monitoring specialist, practically monitoring Swedish media, radio, television, newspapers. And Sweden is, I would say, a rich country, developed in many ways, and it has really, in this global context, it has really good media, particularly in terms of correspondence. That following Swedish media, you can get pretty nuanced and wide image of the world. And every year in August, because everyone in Sweden is on holiday, in July, in the beginning of August, they are coming back to work. So all correspondents, radio correspondents of Swedish state radio, come to Stockholm, to Sweden, in that time, let's say beginning of August. And then, as they are like, let's say, it's a public service, they are public servants, they are paid by taxpayers, they have, it's like a tradition that they tour main cities from the north to south of Sweden and meet listeners and talk about, they have like correspondents from Asia, from South America, from North America, from Africa, from Balkans, from here and there. So that is the possibility for ordinary people that listen or not listen to the radio to meet these people and to ask them all kinds of questions. Stupid, smart, ordinary, unordinary, but it is very interesting practice.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say Swedes are, as a nation, they travel the most of all nations in the world. They are rich, they have that tough climate, darkness, you know, that is long winters, so they really use every opportunity to travel, and they go all kinds of places. And there are a lot of, to call that platforms where people that travel to unusual places or whatever kinds of places, they share their experience, what they've seen, you know, what they experienced with others, you know. So, you know, my point, you know, like with the book, with, you know, this kind of event is really like to share some kind of experience. But I don't say, I do upaliti. No. Okay. To say that yeah, there are a lot of occasions, to put it that way, where people share those experiences. What I wanted to say is, and that's what I say in Brazil. I mean, Brazil is so huge country that, I mean, even if you spend whole life there, it's a great possibility that you won't see everything that is worth seeing and interesting to see. So, you know, this book is one experience. There are one perspective on Brazil. So, and what I'm telling is my perspective is personal. So I don't have some kind of like pretension to have absolute knowledge of the place. But I will be here today, tomorrow, and on Wednesday. And my idea for this first encounter is to, let's say, present people that I mention in the book and those ones that were my main contacts or main sources of information and guides through that reality. So, you know, like I will start. Okay, this is from the radio, but let me start. Okay, I can. With this, I just want to say, you know, talking about Brazilian culture and something that we talked, mentioned indirectly while we were talking before. The cover of the book is basically remix of that painting that is called Aba Paru, that is made by Tarsila do Amaral. And Aba Paru means practically, let's say, man that consumes man. You know, that is it's and this is it was the illustration for Manifesto Antropofago, that is a modernist manifest written by Osvaldo de Andrade, that was like famous poet, modernist poet that was written in 1920s. Tarsila do Amaral, that was also studying in Paris in that time. She was his wife, and to put it simply, and that is for me the major, let's say, quality, but also not only quality, but one thing that I like, love, you know, adore, I could say, about Brazilian way, Brazilian culture, is that praise of blending, of mixture, and that's what we talked in 1920s. It's the time, that is the time where first Institute for Racial Biology was founded in Uppsala. That was the first one worldwide. That is the time where modern Western world is obsessed, to put it that way, with race, with pure race, and so on. In Brazil, they start to celebrate and they choose this mixture as a foundation of
Mixture of
Brazilian
the races.
identity. Yes, because throughout 19th century, Brazil was Brazilian elite was trying to copy European role models and fashions that were coming from Europe. But the thing is that those fashions were hard to transfer into Brazilian reality. So the one of main, let's say, hypothesis of that scientific racism was that countries or societies with significant colored population are predestined for underdevelopment. So Brazil is the country where the biggest number of slaves, African slaves, ended up during the slave trade. So from mid 16th century to late 19th century, it's between 3 and 4 million African slaves that ended up in Brazil. It's practically 30 to 40% of whole slave trade. And what is interesting from the first day for that colonization over there is that it was the biggest mortality of slaves, of Africans, was happening in Brazil. So it was more crude regime than in United States, for instance. But in the same time, it was the biggest mixing with slaves.
What colonial power was in charge at that time?
Portugal was.
Just Portugal.
But it's always Portugal, right?
The Portugal.
It was not always and not everywhere. In Northeast, there were shorter periods when France was like controlling certain areas, and Dutch in
Dutch in the
Northeast.
north, where Venezuela
Yes,
is.